Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is with reference to what has been going on in terms of what is being called trade wars by the U.S. Administration under Mr. Donald Trump. And this, of course, is very, very important in the ways that many economists are actually reviewing the situation and its impact on different countries. And what's, of course, important also is the understanding of the effect that this will have on the U.S. economy in itself. The ways in which these reciprocal tariffs works is something that is being argued against in a lot of ways, not benefiting the U.S. economy and, of course, not resulting in the kind of favorable numbers that Mr. Trump's administration is pointing towards. More than that, of course, there's also the concern with regards to its impact with different countries and its relations, particularly with countries like Canada, Mexico, and China, among others, who are being directly impacted with regards to these tariffs. And, of course, in the ways that these deals are going to create pathways for more regional blocs to be created. At the same time, we're also going to be taking a look at the impact that has on Pakistan-US relations and, of course, in terms of our trade volumes and in the ways that Pakistan will or will not be facing any sort of repercussions with regards to these new policies. That is going to be our focus in the first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to take a look at Pakistan's policy and decision with regards to the deportation of illegal residents, foreign residents in Pakistan, including, of course, Afghan nationals, many of whom have been, of course, given deadlines previously as well, with the last deadline of 31st of March being expired. And then, of course, the ways in which the operations with regards to their deportation has been taking place since the announcements have been made are continuing as part of that process in Punjab and Sindh. And a lot of these Afghan nationals have, of course, been shifted to those facilities, from where onwards, of course, it will be transported to their respective countries. But with regards to what is going to be the decision as to the ways in which this is being taken as per the Afghan nationals, of course, very, very important. We have the defense minister also speaking about how those who are actually siding with the sentiments of how the claims of how the Afghan nationals are speaking about the ways that they're being treated and the fact that this is something that is harming them are not against with regards to what is happening as per the policies, and they don't understand that the ways in which we have, of course, our international obligations, particularly in terms of the different categories of Afghan nationals, and the fact that the refugee obligations are being met by Pakistan are something that they don't understand. And if they are moving forward with these statements, they're harming the interests of the country, and that this is something that is against the interest of Pakistan, of course, with regards to the deadlines already given and the documentation being processed earlier. The third and fourth category of the Afghan nationals is something that needs to be considered when talking about the ways in which this is taking place, and, of course, a closer look at the nuances involved. So that is going to be our focus in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Faisal. And we've also been joined online by political analyst Dr. Niaz Murtaza for our first segment. Thank you very much, Dr. Niaz, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And I'll start with you with reference to what, of course, is being discussed as per Mr. Trump's policies and trade wars and of course, what is being called reciprocal tariffs. And I want your take on how this is actually impacting first the U.S. economy, because the slogan that is being raised is putting America first and, of course, taking a look at the American interest, which is, of course, understandable from any country's point of view. But is that really the case? Is that really happening?
I mean, what we are seeing right now in the US is, a fairly chaotic position where, a fairly dramatic decision has been taken to, just impose tariffs on a very arbitrary basis based on Mr. Trump's fairly limited understanding of how a complex global economy works. So he's just focusing on one part of the global economy and of US's relationship with the rest of the world, which is, the trade deficit. But of course, the trade deficit is just one part of the equation. There are other things like, the flows of foreign direct investment. There is also, the flow of goods and services. There's also the flow of, investments that are made into the US. So what is happening right now is that, the USA, since its currency is the global currency, it's an imperative on whichever country decides to have its currency as the global currency that it should run huge fiscal and trade deficits in order for the global economy to run. So it has to run, trade deficits so that the rest of the world gets access to the dollar, because the dollar serves as, the global currency. So obviously other countries have to have access to the to this dollar, and the only way they can get that is if the US runs an overall trade deficit with the rest of the world, right? But then, this trade deficit results in huge surpluses in some of the other countries like, Japan, China, other Asian countries. They have huge surpluses of dollars sitting with them, and they can't use all of them. So they have to invest those dollars somewhere. And obviously, there is nothing safer than, the treasury bonds of the US government, it being, the global superpower. So, the trade deficit creates surpluses with those countries, but then they come back and invest it in the treasury bonds of USA, and that can only happen if the US is, incurring large fiscal deficits as well. So the trade deficit and fiscal deficits of USA are the things that run this global. It's like a casino economy. If you think about it, trade deficits making a dollar go out of the US, but then it's coming back in the form of investments in the USA. But overall, this cycle is extremely lucrative and beneficial for the US in several ways, despite, the trade deficit. First of all, the US consumer gets extremely cheap goods from China and other, producers around the world. Secondly, because, the whole world is reinvesting its surpluses back into the US, the cost of borrowing for the US government goes down. So Mr. Trump is just focusing on one part of it, the trade deficit, not recognizing how the whole global economy is being run. And if he, tries to bring the trade deficit of the US to zero or close to zero, then this whole global economy balance that had been created by the US fiscal deficit and trade deficits will get badly disturbed. So there'll be a shortage of, dollars globally. Then, people will start looking at, alternatives to the dollar, and the whole system that we have currently now will come under huge stress. So the first thing is, if Mr. Trump succeeds in truly reducing the trade deficit, this is what is going to happen. The global economy may crumble the current system. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen because, as you can see, there is already so much, pressure. The stock exchange has gone down. The other countries are also, putting up their tariffs, etc. So hopefully within, a few weeks, a few months, better sense will prevail once a lot of damage has been done to the whole global economy, and we may even have a global recession. But ultimately, if the US wants to remain as the global superpower with its dollar as the global currency, then it will have to get used to the fact that it has to run a large trade deficit and fiscal deficits, and that don't harm it. The only thing is that, the US is prospering, but different segments of the society are prospering and some segments are not prospering, like, the workers laid off from, manufacturing jobs that have gone abroad. So the true solution to all that should have been redistribution within the US by taxing, the rich corporation and billionaires, and by that helping those workers who've lost their jobs. But obviously that's anathema to, the Republican ideology of free markets and low taxes. So that is why you have this huge chaos that we see right now.
Right, and Faisal, building on this, of course, in terms of the ways that different countries are actually going to be dealing with this, we have seen that China, for example, is a major country that has been impacted because of this. There's also Canada and Mexico, but I want your take in terms of how these countries are then responding to these tariffs, and in the ways that that can actually result in more regional blocs being created, and whether or not you think that, particularly with regards to China, that is something that the US should also be cognizant of.
Yes, and obviously when we talk about China, China was already anticipating it, and they had the point of view related to it that once Trump comes back to the power, of course, they will be hitting China a big time. That's why we saw that Chinese companies and Chinese investors, they started investing in Mexico. And by the way, Mexico is facing the brunt just because of one reason, that suddenly there was a tendency of Chinese businessmen and Chinese investors investing in Mexico. It was more easier for them to, of course, export it to Americas, and then it was of course cheaper for them to deal with Americas from there. Of course, America is the giant when it comes to a market, and Chinese were dealing with Americas like this. But right now, of course, the kind of tariffs which are being introduced by the Americans, that is not only going to affect China, but of course it is affecting their neighbor Mexico big time. And the kind of investments Mexico has been seeing, they are being considered as of no solution or of no avail to the Chinese. When it comes to China, of course, China is increasing the tariff again, and that would, of course, result in inflation in terms of Chinese products in America. And once inflation hits, I would fully agree with Dr. Niaz that of course in America there will be a sort of chaos as well, economic chaos, and eventually we will be seeing that the America itself and the American economists, they themselves, in a matter of weeks or months, they will be asking the president to, of course, go lenient on that. Today I was going through one of the news that more than 150 locations where thousands of people in America, they have protested against these tariffs. Reason being, of course, they believe that it will affect very badly the American economy very badly. When it comes to Canada, of course, Canadian Prime Minister, he has categorically said that the April election, after the April elections, they will be heading towards looking for a parallel, a new world order that can be, of course, given to the whole world globally as an option, an alternate option, and they will not be having today's America under Trump as part of that new world order. It means that, of course, they have a plan as well, a parallel plan. Whether the countries get attracted towards it or not, knowing the facts that the total global economy, out of which I think 24% of the economy is of US is a giant when it comes to economy, and with that economy, as Dr. Niaz has earlier pointed out, with all of the fiscal deficits and all, of course, they are pivotal when it comes to having economy running smoothly of all of the countries of the world. And dollar being a currency, they have to keep it like this. If they go for any alternate solutions which could be beneficial to their own economy to certain extent, or to certain certain industries, they will be benefiting from them. But when it comes to overall population of US, they will be badly hit. That is why we are seeing that there are a series of protests as well taking place within America. Now we have to, of course, wait for a reaction from the Western countries as well, the European countries, EU, how they come up with and what kind of solutions they come up with, because they individual countries, they might not be powerful, but when it comes to EU as a block of countries, that is very powerful. And when it comes to economy, giants like Germany, giants like UK, and giants like France, of course, they would be working on a different set of plans as well. How they come up with their plans, and whether they include China in it or not, or whether they see Russia as a hurdle, or Ukrainian crisis as a hurdle in the new world order or whatever, that is to be seen. For so far, of course, it is evident that at the same time Trump is keeping a side with the Russia as well, and they don't want anything to do with the Ukrainian crisis anymore, and they are of course focused and strictly focused on fixing their economy. How they are doing, I mean, with these kind of tariffs, I don't think this would be a prolonged kind of phase in which they can consider it to be a viable solution to their own problems. Overall, recession is being expected, as Dr. Niaz rightly pointed out earlier, and world economists, they are worried about it, that once recession hits, of course countries like Pakistan, they might not get affected very badly, but there are countries with big economies, especially Indians. I mean, India will be very badly affected by that recession. And when it comes to, of course, Pakistan, I mean, Pakistan is of course getting out of a phase, a very bad economic phase. It would not be that of a factor for Pakistan, but still it will have its own impact on Pakistan. But when it comes to Pakistan's trade with the US, of course Pakistan is currently exporting around $5.2 billion a year, and when it comes to importing from US, of course our net was all good, in terms that we were importing around 2.9 or $3 billion. In the whole scenario, if that balance is disturbed, still it would not be that much of a factor, but of course we have to carry on pushing forward. Maybe with the clouds of these tariffs and all, there will be new markets that would be attracting Pakistan's products, and in that context, Pakistan being a country where producing something, it would be a lenient cost in terms of many of the Western countries, where of course their cost of the production of any product is much higher. If they see Pakistan as a country where their product can be made with lesser of the expenditures, then of course we might be attracting many of the countries wanting to invest in Pakistan. So we can say that some kind of investments, direct investments, we might be looking at, in terms that the kind of tariffs Pakistan is getting, maybe it would increase Pakistan's production sectors, it would increase the job sector of Pakistan, but majorly, of course, we might not be able to get too much of benefit in terms of our exports, but at the same time, production lines and fixing our production lines and attracting investments, I think that would be enough for Pakistan's labor, or for Pakistan's production centers.
Right, and Farrukh, I want your take on the ways in which we're understanding all of this. From a Pakistan perspective, of course, obviously very, very important, and how much of it is really going to impact us, and whether or not all of these avenues that we seemingly are speaking about in terms of possibilities that exist outside of the realm of the US economy, how much of that truly exists for countries like Pakistan and others to explore and to function devoid of whatever goes on in the US.
Right, Sana, thank you very much. First of all, one correction, then two, pointing out of two logical fallacies, and then I'm going to build context and of course analysis also. First of all, that protest that took place in America, that was not essentially about tariffs. It was called the hands-off, protest, and that march was essentially focused, mainly motivated by what Elon Musk is doing through Doge, right? Jobs being culled, jobs being removed and all. But of course, there were banners or placards also depicting that, regarding no tariffs also, right? So I understand that somebody might have mistaken it. Remember that in America, when elections took place, some 75 million people voted for Kamala Harris, right? That means it is a deeply polarized country. Even if 75 million people or 70 million people come on streets, it doesn't mean that the gauge is shifting. So the gauges are not shifting. I think those who voted for Donald Trump voted for whatever he is doing right now. Now, two logical fallacies. One is to assume that the subject of your analysis is as clueless as you are, right? As most of the pundits are at this moment, and they keep on speculating what exactly is Donald Trump trying to achieve. And the second logical fallacy is, and that is also an experiential thing also, if you are driving a car, you are pushing brakes, but the car is not stopping, you are not pumping gas, and then the car starts accelerating, then that means that there is something fundamentally wrong with your frame of reference regarding your car or whatever it is. So analysts, I think, haven't understood this age that we are living in, and that is very important to understand. Most of the people that you must have listened are telling you that this is the economics of 1930s. I would actually care to differ, and I would submit that it is the economics of 2030s. Why? Because a lot is shifting, Sana. As we speak, every day, news items keep on shaping and reshaping how your economy is going to work. AI reports on AI, 3D printing, so many other things. So with everything, the nature of production, manufacturing, trade, economics, everything is going to change. And we don't have any frame of reference. So what we try to do is we look towards past to actually get all these assessments out, and then we try to project that on the future, and that is not going to work. What exactly is happening at this moment? I think and I believe that President Trump has very able team. Scott Bessent was with Soros for quite some time, right? Together they actually, through their trading and all, they crashed UK's economy. It was a hit job, but it was a very effective one. They know what kind of things actually work. But President Trump actually believes two things. One, that the world has been benefiting from America's largesse while making America consumeristic economy and taking all the jobs and manufacturing out of the country. That might have worked so far, but it will not work, Sana, when AI-related tech displacement takes place, and then the production of things or manufacturing becomes very easy because of 3D printing and these kind of technology. So what happens? In that kind of an environment, the country which is self-reliant will take care of itself and its people. This is one aspect. The second one is he genuinely believes, and remember his 2015-16 stump speeches, that his, according to him, America's dollar is overvalued. So through all these crashes and all these things, it seems that he wants to bring about a correction and devalue America's dollar, because it is also, it becomes a non-tariff barrier when it comes to imports inside America, and that actually does not benefit Americans. What has he done before doing all this? He has created a strategic reserve of bitcoins and of crypto. So with that, dollar will be devalued. But even then, America will have its influence through Bitcoin and all, right? And then, of course, with this shakedown, things can actually go awry as well. We have just heard that China is going to take countermeasures, and then but during the trading hours, we heard that President Trump has said that now on 9th, he is perhaps going to add 50% more tariff on China. I hope it doesn't go beyond the escalation ladder. But the fact is that even if China does it, if the argument is that America is hurting its own consumer because in the end the tariff is tax on your people, then that is true for China also. It is going to actually have negative effect on China too. The best approach is negotiations. I think there is no chance in all this negotiation or whatever happens, China is going to lose. So America does not need to lose either, and there can be some kind of redoing of the terms of engagement, so to speak. Now, let us talk about Pakistan. I think that you are looking at this $5 billion exports to US, and you are thinking that the cost is going to increase. Of course, it will. But when you look at your competitors, remember, India is not your competitor when it comes to textile. Remember, Bangladesh is not your competitor. You're competing with countries like Vietnam. So they are also facing taxes. They are also facing tariffs. So competitive advantage will be with you, because out of $5 billion of exports to US, somewhere around $4 billion is essentially textile products. And that is one thing that we are good at doing, and we will keep on doing. So I don't think there is going to be a huge concern here. There's one more thing that I think that the government of Pakistan should be appreciated. It is laudable that Pakistan has announced its own crypto policy and crypto department, and then they have hired the founder of Binance as its head. So I think that the government of Pakistan has an understanding of where things are going, and eventually, while you might think that everything, look, a recession happens when fundamentals of economy are bad. Economics is basically supply and demand. On supply side and demand side, there is no problem. The fundamentals are absolutely rock solid all over the world. So this, and again, once again, the problem with pundits is 1 minute they are talking about inflation, that inflation is going to be caused, and then they are talking about massive cooling off, heating and cooling off of the economy by recession. It doesn't make sense, right? So your car is broken, all your barometers and all your dials are broken. Please try to reevaluate what exactly is happening. I think at this moment this is panic selling. Panic selling happens when, and it has nothing to do with any kind of logic. Why? Because the tariffs that were announced have not actually come into being. They won't. But they haven't so far. And you don't know which company is going to get how much tariff. So how can you actually sell or buy their stocks?
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't make sense. It is all voodoo economics, and that will continue for a bit. But I think then things are going to even out.
Right. Dr. Niaz, I want your take on that as well, particularly from Pakistan's perspective in terms of the way that we see these trends, and not just, of course, with the decisions coming in from the US administration, but of course the global changes that we're also foreseeing. What sort of steps or measures can be taken now in light of course, the kind of economic issues we're already dealing with, be it the IMF or, of course, what is going on within the country as well? Is there a way in which we can actually set that tone or direction or planning for what lies ahead?
Well, Pakistan, of course, is a very small market for the US. It's probably, less than 1% of, the export market for the USA. So it's not a country that, it worries too much. I mean, Pakistan just got caught because, they announced tariffs against everybody. But the real target for Trump is, of course, the bigger countries like India, China, Mexico, Canada, the European Union. For Pakistan, the thing is that even the other competitors have been slapped with tariffs, and some of them higher tariffs. And then the other thing is that, Pakistan produces the lower end of things, whatever it exports to the USA. So it's quite possible that as inflation increases, which it will, in the short term definitely, and maybe even in the long term, that consumers may even shift to cheaper things which Pakistan produces, instead of buying the more expensive things from the other countries. At the same time, Pakistan can also negotiate, and I don't think the negotiations will be very complicated, just given the fact that Pakistan's market is so small for the USA, and it will also look at the other kind of relationships that it has with Pakistan, security related and so on. So I think it can easily develop a good strategy to be able to make sure that none of this affects Pakistan so badly. But what can affect Pakistan more badly is that if there is a global recession, then obviously all the markets that Pakistan supplies to they will get affected, and that indirect route may have, a bigger impact on Pakistan than this direct route. So that is, really the thing to worry about. I don't agree with Mr. Pitafi that, Trump has a very clear idea, and he's implementing that. He's just, made a few promises which excited his base in the Rust states, the Rust Belt. Those people themselves don't have a great idea about how, the global economy works. So he's just shooting in the dark, basically, without a clear plan on how, this whole thing fits in together. And ultimately, I think, these processions, etc., don't really matter to the politicians. They are from the left, from those groups which don't really have much influence on Trump. But what is more important is, the fall in the and even, the fall, his ratings are falling in the opinion polls. But that doesn't matter. What really would matter to him is, the opinion polls reflected by the stock market, because the stock market is not, people from the left, environmentalists, or the so-called woke crowd. It's, the corporate world of USA. So ultimately, the pressure from the corporate world that what Trump is doing is even bad for corporate America. That is probably going to, send the messages down to him, not directly to him, maybe, through the Congress, through his advisors. But ultimately, the message will come down to him that this is bad for his closest, most loyal base, which is corporate America.
Right. Dr. Niaz, before you go, I'd also like a take with reference to our second topic, which is with the Afghan nationals and the policies that of course, have been implemented and the deportation that is taking place. While, of course, there's a lot of argument against it, we've seen the defense minister speak about it. We've seen the government speak about how this is something that is in line with the international obligations, and those which are, of course, holding the refugee status are not being deported. And these are with reference to illegal foreign elements that either don't have the documentation or have been linked to any criminal activities. I want your take on whether or not the process in which this has taken place is something that you think has followed the kind of obligations and guidelines that are being spoken about.
Well, Pakistan is not a signatory to, the refugee treaty. That is true, but still, this whole thing has started because of the fact that, we are getting these terrorist attacks from Afghanistan, and the Afghan Taliban are, not listening to us. So, but that, I think, is not the right basis for, taking it on the Afghan refugees. Many of them who've been living in Pakistan for decades, some of them may even be, citizens of Pakistan because they were born here. And if some of them don't have refugee papers, that's a decision of the government of Pakistan. No refugees goes to the Pakistan embassy, applies for a visa, and then comes to Pakistan. They just cross the border, and that happens globally. Even in Africa, whenever there's a war, people just flee, the refugees flee, cross the border, and then they are given papers. So I think we should approach this humanly. We have a huge amount of, brain drain, labor drain from Pakistan. So in many cases, the Afghan people coming in are just filling that gap left by the Pakistanis who are going abroad. So we should take a look at rationally what contributions they are making to the Pakistan economy, then the humane factor, of the kind of situation you have in Afghanistan, and then take a decision.
Thank you very much, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Faisal, I want your take first on this with reference to the kind of statements that are being made, and of course what Dr. Niaz was also referring to in terms of how this needs to take place and how it's more humane. But I want your take on whether or not that is the case and whether that is accurate in terms of describing how this has been done with so many deadlines being given in the past as well, and of course illegal foreign elements targeted.
Yes, and obviously when we talk about Afghan nationals, first of all, this policy is not only for the Afghan nationals. Of course, there are other nationals as well from other countries who have been here, and of course it's time for them to go back to their own countries, and for certain security reasons as well, it's better for them. Reason being, when it comes to security toll, of course we have highlighted in our show before, and we keep on highlighting that many of majority of, I should say, that the attacks, terrorist attacks that has been conducted in Pakistan by the terrorists, TTP, of course, they are originating from Afghanistan, and when they originate from Afghanistan, few of the immigrants who are Afghan immigrants living in Pakistan, of course, they have been used, and they are facilitating, and they are accomplice to that. In that context, of course, who to trust and who not to, that too is a problem for Pakistan. And overall, of course, to have house in order, of course, Pakistan is doing that. And I want to highlight it here that anyone who hasn't got any sort of UNHCR papers or the other adequate paperwork to show as a refugee in Pakistan, they are being of course sent back. Others who are regarded by UNHCR and regarded by other adequate paperwork, of course, they are not being hurt or they are not being captured from Pakistan. But when it comes to people who are illegally living in Pakistan, of course, they are in Pakistan, and of course, it's time for them to go back, because we have to have our house in order. When it comes to suggestion by Dr. Niaz related to filling the gaps in terms of brain drain, I'm not pretty much sure whether the Afghans would be able enough to, they can be, but when it comes to adequate education and whether they are in this side where they can fill the gaps, it's a long debate. When it comes to Pakistan differentiating between or scrutinizing all of them, of course it has always had a cost. And Pakistan, a country like Pakistan, who's having economic challenges, who's having security challenges as well, to scrutinize all of these Afghan nationals who are in Pakistan illegally, that would have its own cost. Whether Pakistan is able enough to bear that cost, whether we are economically that much strong that we can fix an amount towards that side where we can increase our security forces, where we can increase our manpower in Nadra, or where we can increase our manpower in the intelligence services to scrutinize all of these people, or police services, security forces. Can we spend more to, of course, make ourselves more secure? In that context, the best thing Pakistan can do is, of course, limitizing the threats or genuine threats. Of course, we have the examples of all of these, many of these Afghans, they were involved, all of these activities, not only these activities, but the smuggling as well. I have been going through, many of the businesses they have been running in Punjab, they have been running in even Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Sindh province and KPK province. Majority of the products they are of course selling there, they are smuggled products, and that smuggled product is a huge burden on Pakistan's economy as well, because that doesn't come under the tax net. And how they are bringing them products to Pakistan, that too is a huge challenge once more. Of course, the very people are involved in this smuggling as well. They come and go from Afghanistan or elsewhere, and they, of course, they are smuggling all of these products into Pakistan. It is a huge loss to Pakistan's revenue collection as well. At the same time, other businesses, they are getting hurt as well, because the smuggled products, they are at a cheaper rate and people go for it. And of course, the ones who are having the genuine businesses, they are getting hurt, and that too is a loss in revenue, because if their products are not getting sold more and more, they will be paying less taxes to Pakistan. So overall, it's a huge impact on Pakistan's economy, impact on Pakistan's security. So this whole menace, of course, it has only one solution, and that solution is related to anyone who's having adequate paperwork to stay in Pakistan in a secure environment. They can. But if anyone who's not having any paperwork and illegally not only living in Pakistan, but they are illegally having their businesses as well, hurting other businesses, hurting the tax net of Pakistan, then I think it's time for them to go back.
I understand. Farrukh, I want your take on this, and in terms of since these announcements have been made and of course this decision has been taken, do you think that the ways in which of course this entire procedure has been carried out is to the best of our abilities?
Right, Sana, and I'm going to answer all of this, but will you allow me only 15-second break to say something that I wanted to say in the previous section?
Okay,
Will
go
you?
ahead.
Well, he was talking about Russia. So Russia is livid right now because the oil prices have actually come crumbling down, right? At this moment, if any country is really angry, it is Russia.
Russia.
So oil prices, because of those policies, there are good things also happening. Now let us come back to Afghanistan, Pakistan situation, especially this issue. Look, I am a human being. I have huge empathy. And I disagree with somebody that I'm just going to quote, but it is important to quote him. That is Elon Musk, right? Recently talking to Joe Rogan, he actually said something very interesting. He said that your empathy is being weaponized against you, right? The biggest problem is I understand that many of people who are being sent back, they might be helpless, they might not be very rich, and although they have a country, but they might not have the kind of facilities that are there. But my country, I mean, at this moment, richest countries in the world are, sending illegal aliens out of their country. America is an example, Europe is an example, Australia is an example, umpteen other countries, even India, right, is doing this. So I cannot afford to have any foreigners, especially people who are here for long term, to be here, right? It is like this very simple fact. Sana, let us suppose, hypothetical, right? You are a working class person and you are head of a family of 5 or 6, let's say, right? And you have to borrow because of inflation and because of economic turbulence. You have to borrow to make both ends meet. And what happens is all of a sudden one day you wake up and you find 3 more people camping outside your home, inside your home, and then they are actually demanding that they be given resources. You don't have enough to share between whosoever you are in your charge. How are you going to actually sustain that? Then those people actually don't follow what you tell them to do. They won't pay electricity bill. They won't follow your medical advice regarding polio and other things. So it becomes a problem, right? Remember, illegal aliens are the people that the state cannot see, and that becomes a resource problem. Sarah, why? Because these people are here, and their presence will create so much problem. While you and I, remember, in 20 years, past 20, 22 years since we have started fighting war and terror, because of that, there have been so much spells of documentation. There are at least 19 or 20 authorities that have all the documentation on us. We are born citizens of this country. And yet, for a state that is fighting terrorism even now, to have invisible people is really unaffordable. So these people will have to go, and sorry for that if it causes any pain, but we can't actually keep them any longer.
Right. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate. That's all we have time for. And of course, we'll be talking about other issues in Pakistan and the world over. But that's it from today. We'll now see you tomorrow.